Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. We're excited to have Lee Liston with us, and Nell's not going to be able to be here. She's not feeling well, so please excuse her this evening. But give us a few minutes while we pull him in, and we'll go ahead and get started. For those of you that are joining, bear with us while we uh, take a little bit of time. We're excited to have Lee Liston with us today. Nell's not going to be able to be with us, but we're really excited to meet with my friend, and he'll be joining here in just a minute. So just bear with us while we get started here. And if you're new to our page, go ahead and leave a comment. We're interested in understanding what drew you to Spoonful of Sugar. Do you have any chronic conditions? Do you have experience um, with pain and any kind of chronic condition, death in the family, any kind of thing like that that you feel needs to be talked about more? That's all part of what we're really passionate about and talking about. And Nell wasn't able to be with us today. She really regrets not being here, you guys. But if you'll give us just a few minutes, I've been in contact with Lee today. I know he's planning on it, and it'll just take a minute to pull him in, and we'll go ahead and get started. We see a lot of people joining, so bear with me. And again, if you're new to Spoonful of Sugar, we interview people with chronic pain and all sorts of kinds of conditions. Pain comes in all forms, and we're a nonprofit organization and have several people that we were going to be interviewing. We upload those to our YouTube channel. And so if you are interested in that, you can always send us a message. But we usually do that, weekly. There's other things that we'd like to do down the road, but it takes a little bit of time as we're growing. But we've been excited to see significant response and people wanting to do some other things on TikTok. A lot of great positivity on TikTok. It's an excellent platform, but we feel that one of the ways that it can be used is really talking about some more difficult issues and having it be in a positive way. So, how you doing, Pearl? Thanks for joining us, my friend. So if you haven't followed us, or there's a link tree in our bio, you can go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're really just getting started. Nell's audio letters there are segment when we were on Good Things Utah TV here locally. It gives you a good idea, and you should be able to get your fill around pretty quickly. Nell tries to be here with us. She has central or complex regional pain syndrome. You can see some of the posts that we've got pinned. It gives a little bit of summary. But shouldn't take too long. There's a lot of people in the chronic pain community that collaborate here and have been able to make connections here. And so we hope that you feel welcome. And if that sounds like a place that you want to be, you're certainly a friend here with us. Now, bear with us again. Lee's got to go live, and then I send him an invite. And if he hasn't gone live yet, then I'm not able to send him an invite. So I don't know. I don't think he's done that before. So give us a little bit of time. We'll pull him in, and we'll get started. But if you don't know who we're going to be meeting today, he is Lee Liston. He is a short person, and actually the first one that I met in person and became friends with. And we have stayed connected. We were both invited to Utah Department of Transportation, their Utah marketing shoots. So we did some modeling. They brought in all sorts of diverse folks, and that's where I met him. So I'm really excited to hear about his story. He gives a unique perspective about pain. Where are you guys from that are coming in here? I'm interested to see where you guys are from. We are actually going to be interviewing people all through the world. We've got some in Australia, Ireland. We've interviewed in Canada. So we're growing globally, and we're pretty new. So. He still hasn't joined yet. I apologize about the delay. Here we are. He's right here, so 1 second.
Is it working?
Hey, Lee?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. So what you're going to want to do is do you know how there's a plus symbol where you post content?
Uh-huh.
You'll want to click on that and just go live yourself, and that
Okay,
will
will
put
do.
our
One moment.
cameras, next to each other. So I'll
Cool.
disconnect you here, but the way that you sent the invite, what you'll want to do is you'll want to just go onto your TikTok, press the plus symbol like you're doing a post, but then you just select the live option. And so you're going live yourself on your end, and then I bring you in that way.
Okay,
Okay?
sounds
So
good.
I'll
I'll
see you in
do
a
that
bit.
right now. Yeah.
All right.
Perfect. Is it working?
Yeah.
Awesome. Hello.
How you doing, man?
Good. Sorry, just got off work at my day job, so I drove here and then I had to one run. I'm just running around, living life.
We're excited to hear you. You'll have to speak up as the best you can on my end. When we do a screen record, sometimes um, the audio on my end isn't the
Oh,
best,
okay.
but
So
I can hear you
amplify
pretty
my voice.
good. So what's
Okay,
that?
cool. So just talk really kind of like amplify my voice a bit.
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Cool.
So let me I wanted to just give a little bit of history, you guys, on how Lee and I met. I was just telling him while we were waiting. We both was invited to a UTA photo shoot. Right, they were gathering some diverse group of folks, and they wanted to, um, do some marketing, and so they were just doing a bunch of different shoots, and that's where I met you, and um, we became friends, kind of hit off pretty quickly, and I was able to even be. I was over at your place at one time when you were moving and things, and we've just kind of stayed connected since. And I was I've always been impressed with not only just you and some of the things that you're involved with that you can kind of share on your own, but as you know that my wife has chronic pain, and she uh, has complex regional pain syndrome. And we ended up starting a nonprofit business, and we're interviewing people now. We were on Good Things Utah, and so we've got a lot of people throughout the world that want to be interviewed, and that's just one thing that we're doing is we upload that to YouTube, and there's been all sorts of conditions that we've been hearing about, and some of it might be more emotional, mental. We've interviewed a couple of bipolar. Kristen. We've interviewed Kristen. Lee was in a film that she directed, and we also have just talked about physical conditions that people are in. One has had spina bifida pretty bad, and another's got some open wound holes kind of down her back, and she's just really struggling to get resurgery done. So there's just all sorts of topics when it comes to pain. But one of the things that I really was drawn to you about is you share pretty authentically some of the pain that you've experienced emotionally, and things that you've gone through. So it doesn't mean that you don't have pain. I don't know whether or not, as a little person, whether there's pain, growing pains, and what that things that are sometimes there's surgeries and different things that are needed. So if you're comfortable in sharing any of that, I know that people that listen to this is a safe place where people are respectful, and they just embrace all diversity and all walks of life, and they just really think it's inspiring, right? And so however far back you want to go and whatever you want to kind of talk about, knowing that that's kind of the commonality is pain, and us not talking about it as much as we need to be, and helping people not feel alone, and that kind of thing is what we're looking for. So with that, anything that you want to say just in terms of introductions before we dive into kind of your story? And
Sure. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me again. And I know we've been bouncing around trying to get this scheduled, and our schedules have been crazy, but I appreciate your patience and stuff like that. And then number two, the main thing I want to kind of get into. So my name is Lee Liston. I live in Utah. I'm a local. I've lived here all my life. I grew up in West. I was grew up in Magna in West Valley City, Utah. If you know where that is, just Salt Lake City for those of you who are non, Utah locals. I've grown up here. I grew up there, and then after I grew up, I went to elementary, junior high, high school, graduated, went on an LDS mission to the Philippines for 2 years, came home. When I got home from my mission, I met a guy named Elder Barrett Bergen. His name Elder Bergen at the time, and he came up to me and he approached me and said, "Hey, have you ever considered acting before?" And that was in 2014. And I was like, I mean, people have told me that. Like, I have an animated personality and I know how to interact with people. But I was like, I don't know. I mean, sure, why not? And that was about 7 years ago in 2014. And so I've been off and on, between day jobs, uh, working at Wells Fargo, different jobs to kind of supplement, that
yeah,
lifestyle of being an actor, but at the same time, very much, learning a lot from these day jobs. Like I just got done with Lending Club. I work at Lending Club and I take inbound payments for people in really, really bad situations. And it's interesting that you talk about chronic pain on this platform because I interact with so many people that are going through really, really bad hardships, trying to figure out how to manage their payments and their bills, and Lending Club being one of them. So it's kind of a lot. But as far as me and relating to this audience, I have dwarfism. Obviously, I don't know if you could tell, but I have what's called achondroplasia. It's the most common kind of dwarfism among dwarfism. And Peter Dinklage is another notable person that most people find reference in Game of Thrones, Elf. Seeing him in those kind of things, and so that's what I share. We both have the same kind of dwarfism. Um, I've had many surgeries in my life. I've had, my leg. I had spinal cord compression when I was a baby, meaning the spinal cord was squeezing. They break that bone and they release it, which causes what's called hydrocephalus, which is like water on the brain. So your brain is just feeling. So they put a shunt in there to regulate that, and then you grow up. In 2005, I had a they did a shunt revision where because the shunt broke and the technology was old, so I'd get really, really massive headaches. They were like insane. And then they would put in the new shunt, and the shunt, obviously regulated was good. And then I had my legs straightened, and I had to learn to walk again because I was bow legged. So I've had a lot of different surgeries throughout my life. The thing that I feel like is more chronic now that I'm sorting through is I noted that I had the spinal cord compression up here on my upper neck, and then in my lower neck I have what's called it's kind of developing the same way. So it's developed spinal stenosis, which means that when I'm walking, sometimes my legs will just go numb, like, and I won't, and I can't feel my legs, and I can't, it'll kind of be like rubber band legs, and it's like they'll just kind of shut off. So that's something I kind of deal with chronically that I'm still managing, but I don't know if it's pain, but it's definitely not, but it's definitely frustrating.
Yeah, it's an aspect of your overall person, right? And that that if you're going through um, things physically that have to do with um, uh, that condition, then there's going to be pain associated with that as you're just growing into adulthood, right? And and so that's goes back through your childhood, right? And as you were growing into teenage and into adulthood, do you have much of that from a physical standpoint now, or is it once you get to a certain age, is it is there not a lot of uh, changes or surgeries that need to happen when you're in adulthood, or is that more of when you're a kid, or
Sure. I mean, honestly, it varies with adults. But I know for me personally, like the spinal stenosis is a thing. I have to go to a chiropractor and have them sort through that. That over time it can, as I age, because I'm still young, I'm 29, but over time that can turn into needed surgery and things like that. I don't know. It's kind of like driving an old car. Like you're driving it and you're like a light pops on. You're like, what now? And mechanics will be like, well, with your car, normally this is what will happen. And I think that's kind of the same as you get into adulthood and you're visiting the doctor and they're like, well, with your dwarfism, this is typically, with achondroplasia. So, yeah, I mean, as of right now, though, I'm pretty, like, fit, in the sense of, like, I try to maintain my, like, I don't work out as much as I used to, but I still, like, eat pretty lean, pretty healthy portions so I don't gain weight because obesity is something chronically that a lot of people with dwarfism they'll overeat and then they have a lot of they're not susceptible but they have a high propensity to get overweight, so that's something that can kind of really expedite a lot of problems, if that makes sense.
yeah. And I think that's a good point in that you talk about the fact that you and not just to whatever degree you do it now, but there was a time even more so in the past where you focused on weightlifting um, and so I mean that demonstrates certainly there's going to be differences, but there's also I think more than people even often give credit, that are just normal day to day kinds of things, right? In terms of these are things that I'm able to work out just like anybody else. I'm able to do this and this. Um, do you have people? I'm just kind of curious, and then I do want to kind of get into some of the other things that you touch about in some of your posts that I've heard that have to do with kind of your painful experiences that you're going through. But it is, I mean, it's an opportunity for people, whenever there's diversity, to kind of learn about it. Do you find that when you, um, in anything that you do in life, do you find that you get questions and feel like that you are having to kind of, you know, answer them, and does that bother you? I'm just kind of curious about what that is like from that standpoint, if you don't mind me asking.
Sure. No, great question. And I see what you're saying, because sometimes it's hard to ask it, in a direct way. But
Yeah, because there's
I
all
get where.
sorts of people. I mean, some people might not know what to say because they don't want. I mean, for I mean, for starters, you know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. You're an amazing, handsome, guy, and it's not an issue of that at all. But I'm sure just any differences. I mean, people that can't grow a little bit of hair right here. That difference raises questions, and people want to be able to talk about it and feel like it's okay, and so that's kind of where I'm going with that. Is that I know for me, I don't know anybody else that and is it dwarfism? Is that kind of what we is that is that what you would like?
Yeah.
What's the preferred term? Because you said about you said the term but people forget that. So like, what's the most common thing that you'd prefer?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, dwarfism is great because it's the umbrella of it all. Like, um, he is so because sometimes people kind of have problems differentiating because he's like, you're not going to say he is a dwarfism, right? Like he has dwarfism, but when you're talking about that way, a lot of people that have dwarfism in that community, because they founded the Little People of America. Billy Barty
Little
founded that
pe
years ago.
Little people is
Yeah,
the best. A little
yeah.
person.
Well, Little People of America is what he founded, and so yeah, you're on the right track. Little person is essentially like, oh, he's a little person. But the hard part with little person is to little person. That totally makes sense. But if you were talking about me to somebody and you go, is he?
Yeah,
Oh,
you
he's a
wouldn't say
little
the
person.
blonde person, right? The
Well, what I mean though is because when you say little person, like, what do you mean? Is he like really short? Like, they're not gonna know that that has to associate with dwarfism. Because you're like, oh, he's a little person. Like, what is? Because I've had people come back and go, well, what does little person actually mean? Like, is he
okay.
like just
So
little? Like,
I have dwarfism. Is that's the okay?
yeah, he has dwarf. If you were really like, oh, he has dwarfism. Oh, he has dwarfism. Okay, like
Okay.
that will really bring a good reference
Yeah.
to what it is, and if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
he has dwarfism. People go because if people Google little person, they're gonna Google like a short person who doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have dwarfism. But but if they Google dwarfism, it's like, oh, dwarfism, cool. And then if they want to go deeper and talk to me later, I have achondroplasia. So that's kind of how that kind of circulates. If that makes sense.
Well, and you can talk more about it. I'm sure that where you go, you meet amazing people. Some of them turn into friends, and for whatever whatever degree, yeah, you have opportunities to kind of talk about it. I recognize that this isn't the first time. I hope that as we increase our viewers and people see this, this is an opportunity for you to be able to kind of share, um, to kind of get whatever you would want out there, and to not have it just be a focus about dwarfism, of course, right? Because I mean
Mm,
that's not the only interest that we have. Um,
sure.
and some people, one of the things that the viewers may be curious about is that when you're sharing some of the pain that you go through about just different, like the turbulences and stuff like that, um, sometimes you'll share kind of the some of the specifics of what's going on, but there's room for people, I think, to maybe read into where some of that is related to just the fact that you've got dwarfism. Meaning, some people might. I'm sure that there are people that have dwarfism that were bullied, and that might be part of what they're going through right now. Or, and maybe that wasn't so much the case with you. I know that you were beloved and you had, really blessed with amazing parents and family, and you've got a great group of friends and things. And so, maybe you didn't have that as much. I don't know. And so, however you want to kind of include that as part of it. Other than that, I think that, at least with what I've interpreted, some of the pain that you've gone through is just stuff that any of us would go through about just the human nature and so anyway, I don't want to read too much into what's caused your specific pain. That's part of what you're here to share, but feel free to kind of talk about what aspects are contributing to it and what not, and what are some of the things that you're doing to kind of cope with that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so because I see you. Looking, so when we talk about my dwarfism, if we want to talk about specifics, so we can kind of have specific. We can kind of talk about broad, philosophical subjects about it. But one of the things that was always hard, growing up is, you know, you go out and you're stared at, I mean, like even to this day, if there's a Winco over there, if I walk in the Winco and a kid sees me, like they're gonna point, and and the immediate response for a lot of people is like, well, they're just kids, and that's absolutely true. And most of the time, I can just wave and just be like, oh, hey, how's it going? And and sometimes I'm feeling more energetic, I'm like, hey, my name's Lee. To kind of introduce them, so it's not like they're meeting a person and not meeting a dwarfism, right? They're meeting Lee and not like, and they know that it's a person with thoughts and feelings and emotions just like them. So, and I think the hard part, one time, it's just it can be kind of overwhelming because it's like my friend said it best. He's like, Lee, it's like being born a celebrity because you go out in public and people are immediately like drawn to stare at you. If you were a big time celebrity, if you were The Rock walking around just in the mall, like a lot of people are going to stop and stare, and so it was a unique perspective change. But there are times when I'm just wanting to do normal things. I just want to go to the store and not have to worry about having attention. I want to go out in public. I want to go, and not always have that addressed,
Yeah,
right? So there's certain moments there. So when we bring it up with that, I think there was a lot of like there was a lot of wanting to prove myself when I was younger because I wasn't exactly bullied by any regards, but I also wasn't like excelling in the way that I wanted to be. Like I was kind of like pitied, if you will, for not. I don't know. Like I couldn't play because of my spinal cord compression and I fractured my skull in first grade. I couldn't play football, and it made me kind of feel left out, or
yeah.
and just when you go into a
Inferior or
public bathroom.
excluded. Something's wrong with me, and kind of just coping with that as to you know why, right? Why?
Yeah, yeah, and no, it's definitely that. But I think beyond that, in my my personal struggles, because obviously, you shared that video where I was talking about some pretty intense things, for my life and things that are still affecting me to this day that I'm still, you know, going through. I think it was just there was a time in my life I learned to process my feelings, and process them and talk about them because a lot of males will kind of process their emotions differently, through different ways, and I wanted to be able to openly talk and share and articulate my feelings to feel understood, and I it was interesting because you can throw, you can get on you can get on Instagram, TikTok now even has stories, I believe. Like you can get on and just be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking and feeling right now, and it was like this easy way to like share this live journal with a lot of people. And I I go back and forth. I try not to be too personal about a specific individual, or
Yeah,
like I keep it kind of broad, but I
yeah,
still try to specifically share what I'm going through. I think a lot of males, outside of dwarfism, just being male,
yeah.
we like have sometimes we have a hard time sharing and articulating our feelings. So I think it allows us to feel more connected to those around us.
I I was so taken back by your ability and willingness to do that. You are a significant example for men, throughout the world. I know for me, and not that I want to stereotype, but I think that it can be difficult for a lot of men to just be emotional and allow for uh, give themselves permission to show when something's not okay. Um, you know, even to a woman, right? That it's not a sign of weakness if I talk to you about, what, I'm not really okay in this area right now, and I've got weaknesses. I'm really struggling, and that's going to cause you to be hurt sometimes. That's a real difficult thing to kind of just be honest about. And I love how you have helped change, I think, the mindset and the culture, and what is not only not to be stigmatized, but that should be an inspiration, right? I mean, a lot of people don't share the degree that you're talking about, right? Where you're trying to find that balance of not, uh, sharing the details. It's not like anybody's advocating to have us be such an open book to where there's no privacy and it could be a destructive thing, right? So using good judgment, but still being more open, and talking about it. I know Antonio Voices. If you guys aren't following him, was one of our first guests. I think he might be in here, Antonio. But follow Lee if you're not. And Antonio has bipolar, and he had come out and he was on with his wife, and wow, he reminds me a lot like you, and that um, you're able to talk about tough things, things that are painful, things that people naturally shy away from and avoid, and kind of, you know, whether that's because of an awkwardness or whatever. And you're able to do it in a way that's inviting and that's attractive and that is inspiring. And 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 people that want to do more of that oftentimes just struggle with knowing where to start with that, because they might look to, the Lees of the world and say that comes just a lot more naturally to him. That's him. But I could never do that. And that's one of the goals that we have, is to help people feel like, start somewhere. We had someone that was one of our followers, and she didn't have any posts at all, and she wanted to, and she didn't know, and and she didn't want to show herself or whatever, but she started kind of being open to the community about some things that she was going through, and she ended up doing a post, and she ended up finding friends, and she was just kind of shocked that there were people that just weren't mean and judgmental. So it doesn't have to be that, it could be, something else. But that's what Spoonful of Sugar means when Nell had the vision, is that we've got people that are in pain, and they're suffering of all kinds throughout the world. Um, and the spooning theory is this idea that you've only got so many spoons a day, right? And those that have chronic pain have to be more selective with what spoons they're spending. And so that idea of spoonful of sugar is that when you give those spoons, have it be full of sugar. You could still be of service. You might be in a hospital. You might be, isolated in bed, but there's still purpose for you in your life, and the diversity that you have is a joy to the world and not anything to be ashamed of. And that's what Nell's vision is, and what we're trying to do. So I can't thank you enough. And I know that we're kind of limited to an hour or and a half ish in this call. I know that one of the things that it's been able to provide is an opportunity for people to share their story even more than maybe they have done on themselves on social media. There's only so much that you can do in like a 3-minute post here and there. You get to know a little bit about somebody, but rarely do you get to have this kind of time. Um, so when what are some of the things that you when you think of pain that speaks at the top of your mind to you about what you go through? I don't know if it's accurate to say Lee deals with depression sometimes or something, anything like that. So I don't want to kind of get it wrong. I just know that yesterday, I think it was this last week. I was having some hard time. My wife's been kind of going through some hard times, and I was just watching your video, and I'm thinking, wow, what a friend to have. We've all got those turbulent times, and it just hits me, and it helps me to feel like we can get through it, right? And you might not always get that feedback. You might put that out there, and maybe you get a comment here and there, but I just want you to know that I think more often than not, you're making a difference in people's life, and you might not have a like or a love or a comment, and so keep doing what you're doing. But what else did you want to add to your story and some of the things that you go through?
Um, I think the biggest thing I could add, to bring the human condition together is, like I said, I've been pursuing acting years. I met you on a UTA shoot, and that was one of the first times that I was getting into business with my friend Bear that I told you about, where we kind of got a little more serious about acting, and over time we've accumulated the stuff, and I've still kept the spreadsheets. And that was one of the very first shoots where we were serious about it. I had been on shoots, but like not. It was almost hobby to career. And so I was on that road of that, and I think all of us like have this road that we're on that maybe for you it's to grow this spoonful of sugar media to a big a mass audience of talking to people about chronic pain and bringing more awareness to people with pain, and really kind of making it outside. Sometimes with audiences, right, you have people that are just coming to also have the chronic pain, but you want to go beyond that and create an awareness for
Yeah,
people with chronic pain. So and what that could be an example of that for me. It's like the reason I shared that, I think, when you were talking about the story, is I had just watched Young Rock. It's the show about the young Dwayne Johnson,
yeah,
going through what he went through, and the $7 in his pocket. When he didn't have any money, he got kicked out of the CFL, the Canadian Football League, and he's kind of felt like a failure in a lot of ways. His whole thing was he wanted to be in the NFL and he didn't get in there, and it's something he was like hungry for, and and then having that kind of split decision, like, well, maybe I want to pursue wrestling. With the father had struggled, to
yeah,
have a family and to really do so. I want to be a wrestler and be able to do that, and to have that during that struggle, because nobody, it's fun to watch these because we already, but sometimes I don't think they really hit as hard as they can because we already know what the end is. We already know that The Rock goes on to be a huge, massive celebrity, but in that moment, I think we all kind of forget that there's something relatable there,
yeah,
to our pain, our struggles, and our chapters in our book. Like right now, the chapter of my book is rebuilding my life. I made a huge, and and you shared it on the thing, so I feel like I can talk about it. Where I got a, I got a DUI again. To be honest, this is my second. And it was like, man. I'm like in in the ditch, literally. You know, I'm in the trenches. You know, and like, and I've been rebuilding my life, getting a job, paying my bills, paying my fun. You know, going through those things, and I've still got more to go. And it's like you look at that, and it can feel overwhelming and all consuming because you're like, this is the end of my book. I'm like, no, this isn't the end of the book. This is just a really hard chapter, you know,
Oh, I see.
of life, you know,
Yeah, you
if
might
that makes
not
sense. It kind of looks,
like a lot of what we're seeing, like with The Rock, like you say. I know that you really look up to him, and for good reason. I think that he, Dwayne's an amazing person. Um, but I mean, it's true, in that there. I remember seeing a picture of him in the audience when his dad was in the ring, right, and he was kind of a scrawny kid, just kind of sitting there, and would he have known, not just with his physique, but just what he's applied himself in the path, and so if the arrival of your goals, it doesn't have to be at in the sense of a celebrity status where there's cameras all over you. People are successful all over the place. I mean, part of what I do is I've just got promoted to a QA engineer for a software company, and that's nobody sees or hardly cares about that, right? This isn't something that I'm doing full time right now. And I really like the perspective that you gave, in that if people looked into you, you've had, and I think will continue to have, success with the talent that you have with acting, and it's not just all there's the comedy part that you've been involved with. There's the more serious, like what happened with Lemuria. I know that Kristen has interest to do a full movie. That would be amazing, right? She knows I would want to be involved with that, even if it was the camera crew. um, and so, like you said, the prospects are there. It may not mean you're doing it full time, but that doesn't mean that it's not of value. um, right now, with what we're doing with this, we don't have any donations coming in right now. We don't make any money. We've invested part of our own money, and we're going to continue to do it and pursue it. And who we're optimistic with where it's going to go. But just because I'm not you know making an X amount of salary on me being able to just invest in this full time, and we've got donations that we can really serve people, doesn't mean that it's that the right way to look at it is, yeah, well, it's kind of there. You know what I mean? It is. And so I appreciate how you talk about how where you're working now and some other places that you work, because as you're talking about your goals, it doesn't have to be, both to yourself and to others, some explanation where it's like, I got it all figured out. It's full time. It doesn't include this, and I have everything I want. And a lot of us, I think, sometimes want that, right? I think a lot of us want to kind of be, this is what I'd like to have my life be, and what I don't want for it to be. And if it doesn't turn out that way, then we maybe look at that as being a failure or not as successful as we want to be. And so I think a lot of that's just so normal, and you're just really raw about your own experiences with that. Is that kind of what you're referring to? And that when you're kind of having that frustrating moment where maybe you'd like to do a little bit more acting right here than this, or whatever, just kind of finding your own path in your own life, and some of the pains that can come from that?
yeah. I think there are just moments when it like a long road, and and there are moments when you don't have any traction, any momentum. There are moments when you compare yourself to other people, you know, because I was listening to you like list off all these things that it's not, but like being able to be mindful and list all the things that it is, because you know part of the pain and the frustration, you know, I feel because I've tried to one of the things that earlier on I was really hungry. When we get really hungry for some goal, like so for example, I was really, really hungry to get on the Titan games with The Rock. That's how I got into fitness in the first place. I saw him post about it. That's when I first got infatuated with his charisma and his drive, and I was like, man, I want that, and I want to meet him. And he had posted, he's like, hey, we're looking for people all walks of life to join my team. At
Yeah.
the time, the Titan Games was a very big. There was a very big explanation of what the show was. I quit my job. I worked out 2 times a day. I worked out very, very hard. I learned a lot. I was kind of learning as I went, but I was all in. It was a hedge in my bet. I was throwing all my coins in and putting a lot of heavy hours into that. Um, and and I was, I mean, I was almost delusional with this idea. I'm like, man, I can't wait to meet The Rock. Like, it's gonna be cool, and to not get on. And then I'm like waiting. I'm like, I make my video. I work with some high caliber people, use all my resources, and throw a video together and submit it and wait. I'm like, oh, he's gonna call. Like, I'm gonna be
Yeah.
sitting in
Yeah.
my house. The Rock's gonna call me, and this is gonna be crazy. And then not getting a phone call and really, really, really grinding. And I was like, oh, and kind of
Yeah.
feeling frustrated because I saw other people get on the show, and having those moments. And I think I learned overall the big secret to, if you want to burn out and go hard, just go hard and go all in, throw all your money and be in it. But if you want to be happy when the camera's off, when this camera goes off, anybody, it's like having balance and being mindful and being grateful and like sitting in this moment and going, I'm grateful for this moment. And I think, meditation and guided meditation that I've done through Headspace has been such a huge blessing because I've been meditating for like 4 years, and I've studied Buddhism and things like that, of being very mindful and really being balanced and in the moment. Definitely go hard. Don't be like this non, like, I feel nothing and nothing, but
Yeah.
still be
Yeah.
passionate, but be balanced.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, you had this idea and wanted that to come to fruition with meeting The Rock, but it doesn't have to be something like that for people. It could be, I I was so confident and I had faith in a higher power and myself, and I had the interview went well for this job and they never called me back.
Mm-hmm.
Or um, I'm really falling for this person and I think that they might like me, and then it comes to it and they learn that I like them, but they're just like, you're just a friend. I mean, it could be anything that they would like, that they'd like to have more in their life. Could be um, wondering if the reason why they don't have a family that they do is because something's wrong with them. I mean, we could go on and on and on
Yeah.
about how those kinds of things can be painful because our dreams aren't in sync with reality sometimes, right? And how we react to that without overreacting, right? And being like, I'm a loser, right? Or, oh, I was stupid, thinking of even having a goal, right? Or whatever. Um, and so, yeah, it's a very delicate, oftentimes private thing that people experience. That's just all part of being human. And even to the point where sometimes even in relationships we'll keep something to ourselves if maybe a spouse might have hurt us or whatever, because it's just so vulnerable to put out there and be like, yeah, what of it? This is what I wanted and this is what I really had hoped for and it didn't come true and this is what and and I'm kind of allowing myself to have that vulnerable moment. And hey, if you're wanting to judge me for that, then you know what, unfollow me, right? Or whatever. But I'm going to share what motivates you to do that rather than just confiding in a friend or whatever. I'm just kind of curious how you find so much it's a gift, it's a strength. I first want you to know that that's what I really believe. But
Sure.
it's hard for
Thank
people
you.
to do that, you know, Lee, to just get out there and be authentic like that. So what motivates you to do that?
Um, Honestly, it's what motivates me is like I just don't really think about it. You know, so many people are thinking and they're thinking about what they want to say and they want to how they want to come across, and everybody's so worried about how they're coming across, and they'll film a story like 8 times and they're like, no, that was dumb, or you know, and honestly, it comes from just doing it, right? Like it just, and as weird as that sounds, the less that you're thinking about it and the more that you're just doing, the better you become at it. Because everybody thinks that they're just like when I was a little kid and we were at church. My dad, you know, the kids, and I don't know for anybody that knows it that's LDS, but you know, you do this thing called bearing your testimony, where you go and share, you know, your thoughts and feelings, the things that you're getting from the Spirit, anyway, that you want to share witness of or something. And so, when I was a kid, my dad would take me up and he would bring me up to the pulpit. And some kids, you know, if you go there, if you've ever attended a service during a testimony meeting, kids will go up and they go, you know, the parents will go, I love my mom and dad, you know, and they'll whisper into their ears what to say, you know, and they'll say it verbatim, you
Yeah.
know, to kind of give them the practice to, you know, to say what you are supposed to say during a testimony. And my dad would just lift me up and go, just, just go, just talk. And I'd say, okay. And like, I've been thinking a lot about, you know, and I did that when I was 4. When I was 4 years old, my dad would just lift me up and I would be standing on a pulpit. So I don't know if being an audience was ever, I will recognize that I have a gift of being able to share my thoughts and feelings because I did it from a pulpit. When, you know, and I've always kind of been in a place when I had an audience and a bunch of people were there. If you know who John By the Way is, I went and he's like a, you know, a pretty prominent LDS person who, you know, gives a lot of motivational speech, you know, and things like that, gives talks, gives firesides, if you've heard of a fireside. And I got asked to bear my testimony right before him. And I went and sat next to him, and I was like, "Hey man," he's like, "Hello." You know, I was like, it was pretty cool, kind of starstruck meeting him, and because I, you know, think he's an awesome, you know, guy. And he goes, you know, like, "Hey, don't make it too hard for me to follow up." And I was like, "I'll do my best," you know, and kind of little, you know, fun jab there. And I went up and I started, you know, speaking about the pulpit and how grateful I was that it like rises when I can go up and it can lower for me, and made a joke and everybody was laughing. And I knew I had a gift for sharing with audience and talking about it goes back to articulating my feelings. I think the biggest thing that if people want to do, like, not everybody has that gift. I want to acknowledge that, and I'm grateful for it. That I've always had that gift to share my feelings on a, you know, on a public platform like this. And I think the main thing is learning to paraphrase with yourself. If you're driving in the car and you're like, and you're feeling a feeling, learn to paraphrase. Go, and it sounds crazy, but like I'm trying to think of a way that would make it make sense to everybody, you know, because not everybody's like, well, I can't do that. Well, I can't do that. Go, all right. It sounds like you're feeling frustrated. Why are you feeling frustrated? I'm feeling frustrated because, you know, and start to talk about that. And then if that's something you want to share, then you get on and you're like, guys, I've been frustrated lately. I've been frustrated. I've been auditioning, and I'm not booking any gigs, and it's frustrating. But I'm gonna keep working on it, and I'm gonna keep auditioning. And you know, you never know. I sat in the shower once. I remember, and I'm sitting in, you know, and I'm looking in the sitting in the shower, going, and I booked a few gigs, and I felt kind of good about it. And I was like, what if I never book anything ever again? You know, but obviously that's not the truth, because you just have to. That's something. It's self talk, right? Like the self talk that you kind of have with your and I've and I've explored that with my dad a lot growing up, where he would help me with my self talk and having the things that I talked about in the pulpit. So I've had a lot of experiences in my life, and my mom always said when I was a little kid, when I was 4, she said, "Lee, people are gonna stare at you, but they're gonna look at you and they're gonna want to hear what you have to say." And my mom would say that when I was a little kid, and I was like, "What does that mean? Like, I don't what?" In learning that, like, people, there's a myriad of reasons, and I know that I have a lot of charisma and ability to do that, but honestly, it's just a practice because something I really want to emphasize when you have somebody like me, like, "Oh, you're gifted at this. How can other people be gifted?" I think it's to step back, like, what am I really just naturally gifted at? And everybody, I guarantee everybody can think of something like, "Man, I'm really gifted at that," and lean into it. Lean it because not everybody is going to be gifted at getting on Instagram and going, "Man, I've just been struggling lately and it's been really hard," and sharing their feelings. But maybe you're gifted at listening and you're a really good listener. Because trust me, I talk a lot, and I'm grateful for the people in my life that are gifted at listening. If everybody was gifted at talking, I don't think anybody would be able to communicate.
Yeah,
And
because you got to have the
so
listeners too, right?
exactly, like you're listening to me right now, and so I just think the biggest thing you can do is not so much how can I learn to share my feelings? It's lean into what you are good at, what you are naturally gifted at, and what you enjoy doing, right? Because some people are naturally gifted at acting, but don't enjoy acting forever. And the only thing I want to share to, you talk about like eventually I want to do this with a nonprofit. When I listen to child star actors or just successful actors in general, and they're being interviewed, when they get asked like, "What is your advice to other actors?" Maybe for you, like, what would be your advice for TikTokers that want to grow their TikTok? Whatever it may be, right? And you listen, everybody like huddle in, they like listen close. They're like, "What are they going to say?" Because they want it like everybody wants that. They say, "Enjoy the process, enjoy the process," and it's like, oh, that's relieving. Like, but it's true. If you want to be a professional bodybuilder, enjoy the process. And I think the process that we're all learning is finding what we're gifted at individually, what we're naturally gifted at, and enjoying the process of getting better at that. And it doesn't have to be what I'm good at. I'm grateful that I've been told all my life, like, "Man, you can just share deep stuff or you get things," and like that's my gift. But let's talk about what your gift is.
Yeah. Um, a lot of people have conditions that people can't see, and it makes it easier for them to hide it.
Hmm.
And as part of that learning to hide it, that can almost add to um, difficulties in not hiding other things inside of them, right? How they're feeling and things like that. Um, because there's a lot of conditions that people have, even if they're physical, that you can't just see right with your eyes. Um,
Yeah.
do you feel like that your dwarfism and having that not be something, not that it is worthy or needing to be hid, but you're out there throughout
Hmm.
your whole life, and so there isn't this hiding, right, in terms of being out in society. Do you feel like that was a blessing in some ways, uh, in adding to kind of the way you were raised with your parents, that helped you gain that strength of also not hiding as much of the stuff that is inside of you, right? Do you feel like that played a role?
Definitely. I feel like a lot of people feel invisible, right? I was at San Diego Comic Con with my friend Josh Shipley, and we were talking about, how I get stared at a lot, and he goes, for me, he goes, Lee, he goes, for me, people stare at you, yes, and they point and they acknowledge that you exist because you look different, but nobody points at me and goes, "Mom, hey, look, it's some generic white guy." Like he said that to me, and
Yeah.
and just some generic individual, and points to that, and I was like, it was kind of profound, right? Because a lot
Yeah.
of people feel invisible, and for me, I was forced on the stage of being seen by people, so I think that does play a huge part, in adding to that, where I was kind of put on the spot a lot. People have approached me all my life about
Yeah.
asking, different questions, sometimes inappropriate questions, but like, and asking, a myriad of things. And so, yeah, no, definitely, I think having dwarfism has really, you know, given me the practice, if you will, of sharing myself, because I can't hide. I have nowhere to hide,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, and I think that it doesn't mean that people that don't have things that are as physical, um,
Hmm.
can't develop a strength. I think that it maybe can start by making a decision to make whatever it is that you feel that you're hiding or that you're wanting to be invisible because of X, Y, and Z, fear of what people are thinking about or whatever. You know, as you start to do all the things that you can to make it more visible, whether that's sharing the symptoms that you're having or whatever, there can be an element of um, people uh, gaining that strength and that comfort of sharing more with each other. But it's fair to say that a lot of that does have to do with the feedback that we get from that, right? I mean, you um, have had throughout your life people responding positively to you. I mean, you're a good-looking model badass. I mean, and
Thanks.
so I'm sure that helps from the physical aspect, and then you've got things that you've shared internally, and you've got people that feel inspired by it. That's got to help in terms of when you move, from not being invisible to, um, to more known and seen, and people respond favorably to it. What would you say to those people that either have experienced way more negatives in terms of people's reactions when they chose to do that, um,
Yeah.
or even if they have, what they could do to maybe make more conscious decisions in their life to not have those people, and to realize that there are people that will respond favorable, like don't give up, right? I mean, how many people, Lee, check out of life, not just because the pain, but because of feeling, rejected, feeling like they don't belong. And so what would you say to those people that that maybe uh, don't feel like that they're as good at having parts of them that they've maybe felt were successful of being invisible, right? Keeping at home and not being social. What can they do to feel more free from that?
That's a hard one, in the sense that I'm naturally an extrovert. I naturally, I love interacting with people and hanging out with people, but I do have my own limits, right? That doesn't mean I'm like have my own. I don't need my own me time. I think it comes from a naturally of like, ba- really. I mean, it's cliche, but really taking baby steps, and really trying new, really trying new things. Because it really depends on what your goals are, but I think sometimes people base their experience based off what they experience in the first, 5 minutes of sharing about that, or maybe, because I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if you have something internal about you that you don't like sharing with other people,
Mm-hmm.
There's parts of me I don't always share, that I don't like to share, and that I've never said, even in all the
Yeah.
things that I've said on an
Yeah,
Instagram post
exactly. Yeah, that helps
where
put in
people,
perspective. It's
whatever.
not like you just share everything about yourself. Yeah.
Correct. And I think you have to ask yourself is like, what are you wanting to be seen? What are you wanting to be seen, and why do you want people to see it? And being able to go, what, and then how are you going to have people see it? Because you've talked about, like, more depression, or bipolar, or those things that are unseen, and it's like, how do you just bring it up, like, so I'm bipolar, like, how do you bring that up, naturally? And I think it kind of goes, guys, I've been wanting to share this, and I don't know, but I want to be understood. I'm bipolar, and people are like, oh, what's that, and and honestly, the more educated you are on it, the more you can easily educate other people. But I think you have to make it known that you want to share it. And sometimes, like, one of the things I'm insecure about, it's easy on this kind of thing to not worry about it, but in other situations, one thing I get insecure about is I talk a lot. And that maybe that's not, a disorder. That's not, well, maybe it's ADHD. I don't know, but you know what I mean. Like, it's not necessarily anything like depression or bipolar. But it is something that I don't always like. With
Yeah.
my personal relationship, like, man, I
Yeah.
talk a lot. I was driving with my girlfriend last night, and she did an impression of me when I call her and give her updates, and I was like, man, I talk a lot. I'm annoying. Like, I
Yeah.
literally, like, thought that to myself,
Yeah. Well,
and
and Antonio,
it was like,
Antonio Voices, who has bipolar, he's in here. You'll have to follow him, but um, he's. I know you can't see the comments, but he's like, he's an amazing guy. So he's someone I think that you'd get along with as well. If he hasn't already sent you a friend request, look for that. But he was amazing. He was actually the first one that we talked to that had to do with that side of pain, right? Because a lot of people that we talk to have physical pain and things that you might, I've had back surgery or something that's just like right at the top of what might come to the forefront. Um, as we know, there's pain comes in so many different forms. And I wish Nell, she'll have to watch this once it's up to YouTube. I talk about you. She knows about you. She thinks you're amazing. She's so sad that she wasn't able to meet it. When we had to do a little bit of a reschedule, and we did it to Tuesday, we were hoping that she'd be able to make it. So just know that she, gives her love, and I think she'll look forward to watching this video. Um, what else do you got? We've got probably another 15 minutes ish here. Um, what for the first for people that are getting to know you for the first time, maybe on YouTube with the recording, um, and what would you say to those people that you haven't already said that you would want to share about yourself, about what your relationship with any kind of pain has been? What have we not covered that you feel you would want included?
I think a form of pain that I've gone through is definitely rejection. And I think that's like we talked about that earlier, where you said, it was funny that you said, like, sometimes you'll like a girl and she's just a friend, and she just, people won't feel the same way that you feel about them. Because I was on that show on TLC, My Little Life, where I was like filleting my feelings of, like, to this person that I really liked, and long before we filmed, like, nothing was staged, where, like, it was kind of cultivated, where it's kind of perfect for TLC, because they were like, oh man, this guy's gonna get hurt, and we're gonna film it. Like, not that
Yeah,
that was their end goal, right? But I think one thing I dealt with really heavy was really liking this girl named Bailey on My Little Life, and I was like, and part of that was fueled by the chase, right? Of, like, chasing her and liking her and wanting a relationship with her, and kind of like, going through, what guys do, when they really like somebody, and they, whatever you want to feel. And I remember being on that show, and like, it was really weird because we had to film pretty emotional things. Like, people talk about, like, oh, I had, they're in a scene for a show, and so they can kind of like relive a private, like, heartfelt moment in their mind. Like, they can relive it. Like, they're like, oh, I'm gonna use this to fuel to into this part. But for me, I was legitimately going to like tell. I remember they were like, tell Bailey how you feel, and I was like, okay, and I told her, and it was really, emotionally intense, and they turned off the cameras. They're like, are you okay? And I remember I was like, I'm just doing my job. That's what he told me to do. And but at the same time, like, there was a lot of it was a complicated process, right?
Yeah.
Of filming that show and playing myself out. So I think the point is put yourself out there because you heal. Like, you heal over time. Like, I have a healthy relationship with a girl, that I've been dating for a few months now. It's going really well. We've had our ups and downs, like any couple does, and we've had our pain points, but we've had our really good moments. And I think, and she has dwarfism like me, and she's the first girl in my entire life that I've dated that has dwarfism like me. And, which has been a really eye opening experience. Because
Yeah.
when you talk to me about dwarfism and my pain that I've had with it, I've
Yeah.
talked to her about it. And she's like, I don't relate with that. And it's almost, and it's like feeling alienated by somebody who looks like me,
Yeah.
and if that makes sense. And kind of seeing that there's more perspectives as you like let people get close. So I think it's like the biggest pain that you have is you're going to let people get close, and people are going to get very close to you, whether it be a friend, it can be a family member. And you have to have this idea of impermanent, that sometimes things are always changing, relationships are always changing. And it's like, if you don't know that things are impermanent, you're going to get hurt a lot. You're going to get hurt if you audition for the Titan Games and you don't think that, you think, oh, I'm destined to be on there, I've got it. And you're not open to the idea, like, maybe I'll get it, maybe I won't, but definitely hope I get it.
Yeah.
Or, I'm gonna go for this girl. Maybe she's gonna like me. Maybe we're gonna get along, but maybe we're not, and that's okay. And being open, not having the biggest pain that I've ever created. Some of the biggest pain that I've ever created for myself is having expectations and really putting all my money on an outcome. You know,
Oh wow.
instead of just
Yeah.
enjoying the journey
And just
itself.
taking it so just deeply personal, right? That just rejected, something's wrong with me. I feel like, what I mean, just can be kind of self-inflicting sometimes, right? If because it doesn't mean that it's true, right? And then you get into maybe thinking some false beliefs about yourself, and it doesn't matter, who tries to convince you that those things that you're telling yourself that's causing that pain aren't true. You're in that place where, you know, it's just as true as anything, right? And so you're saying
Mm-hmm.
dare to experience rejection, and be willing to challenge your own thinking about if the outcome doesn't go the way that you had planned, instead of being so attached to an outcome of some kind, right? And you
Right.
say
No,
that
and
that's something that you're still. I mean, I know that to varying degrees we're all working on that, but that's
yeah,
something that you feel you continue to have to remind yourself. It's something that some things we overcome, some things we just cope with, and they get better and better. But it might be something that we struggle with for our whole life, and you're saying that's something that's hard for you.
yeah. I mean, to varying degrees. I mean, honestly, like, nobody would really know this, because like you see my Instagram story, but I struggle with patience and being patient. I'm a very like intense dude, and when I want something, I'm like all in, and I have to remind myself to be like, okay, enjoy the process, like enjoy what you're doing. Like it doesn't always, and there's varying things where it's like it doesn't work out because I nightly plan every night. Like I plan out, sections of my day
Yeah.
in which that can almost be counterintuitive to what we just talked about with an outcome, but I plan it and kind of, write it out. So there's definitely ups and downs to that process, but I think the big thing is understanding that it, like you're saying, it is lifelong. That we all have these lifelong things, but the nice part that you're talking about, when you talk about this chronic pain, right? These chronic emotional things, that we're all in this lifelong journey together, and that the more that we talk about it, that you're like, man, I'm really impatient. If I were to say that more, people are like, dude, I'm impatient too. Really? I didn't think you were impatient. You didn't look like you were impatient. You didn't even come across, you know.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think the
It's
more
true.
open we are, not saying like I ran a guy off the road. He was in my way. I was so like sharing that,
Right.
like going
Yeah.
0 to 60, but just start small. Go. I struggle with being patient, and then let that naturally grow. And all of a sudden, you're like, man, I'm
Yeah.
not the only one that struggles with being impatient.
Yeah. Well, I know we have a lot in common. I know it is. It's sometimes hard to be patient. It's hard to be patient with myself. When I whether it's getting feedback or you know discovering parts about yourself that you're not as proud of or that you're struggling with, and you're not able to just fix like that. Um, I don't know if you can relate to that too, but it's really difficult to
Mhm.
be patient with myself, in that I want to just have that change because it's a good change, and it's not like I'm not applying effort, but it just doesn't change, and so there's going to be that element of a part of me that might never change. So where do you where at what point do you and people that are even in your life have to have that grace and acceptance, um, and patience as well, because they can see how hard you're trying, and you know what I mean. Hopefully that's kind of along the lines of kind of what you're saying, is these things that we want oftentimes are good things, and they're good to work towards, and so many of the times we reach our goals, but so often goals are either reached in twice the time than we really wanted. Maybe never, right? I mean, heaven forbid, I would love for you to meet, The Rock, but it's possible you may never, right, in this life. And so, do you go your whole life kind of being patient for that, and going through, thinking that that might never happen, or do you somehow come to terms with it, right? And that's kind of what we're saying here is balancing all of that to try to still be at peace with ourselves.
Yeah. And we're ever changing, right? Like we wake up one day and we feel really good about it, and there's others we don't, and I think that's really just comes down to self care and being in your moment in your life, in your car, in your vehicle, in a parking lot. Like having an interview, like being in your moment in your time and going like, okay, they're in their moment and I'm in mine, because being present, is kind of really the ultimate goal, I think. Not being all over the place, because those people, as much as I love The Rock and those people, sometimes they're all over the place. And the other thing
Yeah,
is, they have a lot of money where they've delegated a lot of their basic, like
yeah,
Mr. Beast, for example, big YouTuber, delegates people to just go buy his clothes. You know,
yeah,
have you ever paid someone to go buy your clothes? And like some people enjoy the process, and that can be very
yeah,
lonely because, like, cause you're like, man, I just want to do normal things like normal people, and
yeah,
I have. being a YouTuber that I have to pay people to go buy my clothes or pay people to go buy my food, pay people to, do a
Yeah.
myriad of things for me to where all that you're doing is thing and people are like, oh, I want to be you. But it's like, yeah, do you want to be me? Because I can't even like do anything normal because all I can do is focus on YouTube videos or all I can focus on
Yeah.
and you're only seeing that. So it's just like the tip of the iceberg of an individual. Like, do I love The Rock? But I also know that he's a person with limits, and he needs to eat, he needs to sleep, he needs love, he needs attention. And to
Yeah.
varying degrees. But I just really think at the end of the day, like we're all just people with needs and wants, and we try to follow our hearts, and then our brain is like, well, it's conflicting. But I think it's like when you can get your brain and your heart in sync, when you're in sync with yourself in the moment, like your heart's like, man, this is what I want, and your brain's like, okay, let's just think through this logically, and they're a
Yeah.
team. Because I think the real pain
Yeah.
comes when your heart wants something like, oh, I want to meet The Rock, and your brain's like, well, there's no way you're gonna meet him. Like, no, and you're like, man, you've had like 5 friends that have worked with him, and when are you gonna work with him? It's like, oh, I really want to, and it's like being like, okay, that would be really cool. I still want to, but if I don't, that's okay. And kind of bringing it back in sync with yourself, if you will.
Yeah. No, it's so true. You really are one of my top examples of someone that demonstrates that um, we all have got pain of different kinds. Nobody's walking this planet without pain, and so the more we talk about our diverse stories about that, we're stronger together. And you are also one of the best examples, Lee, that I've seen of someone who defines what success really is. Success is not the arrival, the claiming that all the principles that lead to success, I'm doing them. It is talking about how it's a constant learning process. There's mistakes made, you make adjustments. You've got some highlights that you can talk about where things worked out maybe a little bit more than others and then sometimes not. But through all that journey, that's what success is. It's not something that is without failure. It's not something that is um, you know only something that looks like this and I don't have anything on the side. Like you've got things that are happening that you're doing that are smart with that are supporting yourself financially while you're also pursuing other things that you like to do as well. So I just really commend you for that because too many people I think can get caught up in that we all want to be successful. And part of the pain that I think can come is feeling that we're not successful, right? Feeling like that we're a failure. And the more people can see their own lives and each other's lives, especially when pain that compounds and complicates things even beyond what a lot of people aren't having to go through, to see themselves as a success. You've got people, my wife is in bed a lot of the time. And I know that she doesn't feel like a success all the time as we're starting to get this going for her, and even though we've been having success. And so it's an example. And can you imagine if you were going through something and you couldn't really work full time, be out of the house a lot? There are people in hospitals. Can you imagine if it's hard for us to feel like that our stories are success stories? Imagine what they're going through and feeling like that they're of worth or a success. So I really thank you for sharing your story. Um, I hope that you and your own challenges of what you go through can ponder what we've talked about. Maybe even rewatch the video. You can share it as you'd like. Because I want to shout from the world to those uh, people that feel that way, especially my wife. Um, you are absolutely of worth and as successful, and that's certainly true for you, my friend. I am constantly cheering you on. There's no excuse we shouldn't have gone out and done something. I know you're probably still not at the place that I helped you move to. You probably moved maybe once, maybe even twice since then. Um, and we live in the same state. I know you're not very far, so let's plan a get together. In fact, I even remember we went and chilled at Taco Bell. Right? We laugh here on these lives and how much I like Taco Bell, and oftentimes I'll go get Taco Bell after these lives. But do you
Mhm.
remember we went to Taco Bell after, and that's some good memories. And I miss you,
Oh, totally.
and I appreciate you joining. And we'll be in touch. Okay.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for having me, and thanks for the questions. It's really fun. I know it's been busy, but thank you for your patience. With coordinating and getting it all worked out. This was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And watch for this. Give me a couple of days, and I'll upload this to YouTube. And you can share the link with people if you want. I know there's a lot of people, both on my end and yours, that didn't have the opportunity to join us live. Yeah, especially how we usually do that at 6 p.m. Mountain on Thursdays, right? So a Tuesday reschedule at 7 p.m. Mountain. We didn't get as much that maybe may otherwise have joined us. So I'm really looking for people to get to know my friend Lee here, and we'll be in touch. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good night. If you aren't following Lee Liston, go and follow him. You can also find him on Instagram and Facebook. And there's a lot of exciting things going on with Lee. So keep watching out for him. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye.